All right, now that we're getting some folks into the room, we're going to get started. Good afternoon. My name is Joe Sommer. I'm the Executive Director at Episcopal Parish Network, and welcome to this digital workshop on budgeting and missions, a chance for you to think with and learn from some of the experts in the field. We're thrilled to be partnering with EO Tours, a longtime friend of Episcopal Parish Network, and former board member Donald Fishburne, a longtime friend of Episcopal Parish Network back in the days when it was the Consortium of Endowed Episcopal Parishes. It's a great group of folks that are going to share their learnings about how to budget, how to think of your mission trips, and we're thrilled to have you with us for that today. Don't forget, last-minute registration for our upcoming conference is available. We are meeting in Kansas City, February 25th through 28th. EO will be with us, and you can speak with Mark and his team there, which would be terrific. But we look forward to having you with us in Kansas City or on another digital workshop soon. Thank you so much for all you do to support Episcopal Parish Network. And without anything else from me, I'm going to hand it over to Mark and let them get started. Thanks so much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us. And I need to mute something here. Here we go. That's better. We're glad that you're joining us, and we're glad to be able to present some information about missions travel and budgeting, and hopefully some ways that you can save some money on logistics and airfare and invest that back into your mission and ministry. My name is Mark Ye, and I've been with EO Tours for about 11 years. And before that, I was in Christian publishing for 25 to 30 years. So I've been in the ministry of the church my whole career. And EO Tours has been around now for over 50 years. We are a leader in Holy Land travel, probably still the biggest provider of Christian travel to the Holy Land. We do other Bible land travel and lots of other Christian journeys around the world. But our missions department is an area that is a little less known, but we still serve thousands of people each year that go on missions and service trips around the world. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. One of the people joining us is Donald Fishburne. I want to introduce him first. Donald is, well, I'll let him tell you a little bit about himself, but he's been working with EO for about 8 to 10 years. We met through Chuck Robertson a long time ago. And Donald, why don't you tell us a little bit why you're involved with EO and why EO missions?
Right. Thanks, Mark, very much. I'm really glad to be with you and with everybody who's joining us. I've been an Episcopal priest for a long time, and I got to know Mark at General Convention and at what was then called Consortium of Endowed Parishes, now Episcopal Parish Network, 8 or 10 years ago. And one of the questions that Mark asked me when I retired as rector of a particular parish in the Southeast is, so how many times have you been to the Holy Land? And I said, never. So the first thing that we began with was is in my early retirement, EO made it possible for Sarah and for me and for several others with us to go to the Holy Land for the first time and discover all that that can mean in ministry and life and in our personal faith, and also that EO exists as its genesis had to do with taking pilgrims from the States to the Holy Land, and still is very heavily engaged. EO is very heavily engaged in making disciples and nurturing disciples. All of that rang true for me. So we began to travel more with EO on pilgrimages, river cruises. We've been to Europe, as well as the Holy Land, Egypt, and other Middle Eastern territories, Europe, some of the British Isles, and also Canada and Cuba more than once. So all of that began to help me recognize the power of group pilgrimage and the power of group missions. I got to know Gordon a bit in the missions department of EO and began to send referrals over to him so that Christians, youth and adults who go on mission trips in the States and overseas and abroad can benefit from the expertise that EO Missions has. It's been a great ride for me, still is, and I'm glad to be with you today.
Great. Well, thank you. We've very much appreciated Donald's service and direction, and professionally and even personally, Donald and I have gotten to be good friends, and our wives as well. So I want to introduce Gordon, who's sitting next to me. Gordon leads our missions department. And Gordon, tell us a little bit about yourself and why EO started a missions department. That wasn't originally part of the plan 50 years ago,
No.
But tell us about the history.
Well, I started I've been here 33 years this year. I started with EO in 1992, and my role at that time was to book the international travel, the international flights for the Holy Land program. So that was my main focus. And then at some point along the way, we just started recognizing there's a need. There's these groups that are taking, churches that are taking groups on missions trips. And we started looking at we have buying power with the airlines, we have contracts, we have relationships. And because of our volume, we're able to get good prices. And we started wondering, what would it look like if we were to take what we do and add our professionalism in the world of missions? And so we stepped into that world and just started dabbling into that. So it was just a need, and we were someone that could fill it.
So right now, if I remember right, you have the missions department has sent people to 150 or 60?
160 countries and territories around the world.
Okay.
Yes.
So if they have an airport, you can probably get them there.
We can get them there. Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So let's jump into some of the details. We're going to kind of start with the basics of travel, of airfare especially. So first, what kind of groups do you serve through the missions department?
So we serve a wide variety of groups. We get medical teams, we get construction teams, it's colleges, universities. We have churches of all different denominations. And so it's great to hear the reports sometimes when they come back and they'll say, we'll have a medical team, and they'll say they did 100 surgeries while they were on the field, or they built, worked on something. So sometimes we get to hear about the types of things that people do, so it's really exciting. But we have, they'll do vacation Bible school, it's youth, it's adults, they'll do camps, so just a wide variety of things.
So since COVID, a lot has changed in the airline world, fortunately. Lots of positive things, especially for US-run airlines. So what are some of the newer policies, practices that maybe would be helpful for mission groups to know about that would affect them?
There's been a lot of change. That's one thing about the missions department or just the airline industry in general. There's been so many changes that have taken place and since COVID. And you might remember when COVID first happened, I can't get rid of the images in my mind of all the planes sitting in the desert. Well, they took a lot of aircraft out of operation during that time, and not all of it came back in. And at the same time, because of COVID, a lot of the crews retired or got out of the travel business completely. And so you see this drop in the inventory, the availability, and also in the crew. And so it's kind of forced the airlines to have to adopt a different approach to how they do some things. And they're very, very trying to get a tight rein on their inventory. And so one of the things that started new after 2020, and we pushed back on it initially, but it's the wave of the future, unfortunately, but they started charging booking fees. And so before that wasn't the case. You could book something, if the customer didn't take it, the seats just go back. But the airline started charging, in some cases, it varies from airline to airline, but it's usually a flat fee, like $100 for like Lufthansa, for example. And that fee will go towards your final invoice unless you cancel. If you cancel at any point, you lose that fee.
So that's for any group?
That's for any group.
Okay.
United Airlines a little bit more stringent. It's like a $600 fee. So some of them have, and they didn't start out there. They're gravitating up to that. So it's they're just trying to, which it does weed out some of the groups that are not very serious, and it's holding their seats. So that's new. But as long as the group is going to travel, it'll go towards your final invoice. Another thing that maybe has been around a while, it just seems to become more and more prominent, is with this seat assignments. You expect if you buy a ticket, you're going to get a seat, which means you're going to get a seat number, a seat assignment, but that's not always the case. You're basically buying a right to sit on that plane, not exactly knowing where that's going to be. And so some of the European carriers in particular, they're charging extra for a seat assignment. And so if you are, it doesn't necessarily apply to groups. If you have a group of 10 or more, we can get a seat assignment for you. But if you have a smaller group of 9 or less people, you buy the ticket, but then you have to buy a seat assignment as well. And up till this past summer, when a group someone would buy individual tickets and they said they didn't want to pay extra for the seats, we'd tell them it's no problem. You can get it at the airport at no cost. But now this past summer, we had a couple of instances back to back where people were calling from the airport saying, we may not make it on the plane because they're overbooking the flights. And people who buy the seat assignments are getting on the flights. And so can you help us out? In the end, it all worked out. But since that time, we started recommending to people, if they were in that situation, it's worth it to pay the extra. You can go right online with the airline and do it. It's not something we're behind or promoting. Go right to the airline and buy your seat. At least it'll guarantee you're going to get on the plane. Another thing is the baggage is something that people should be aware of, because in a lot of markets, like in the US and Latin America, they're charging extra. The Caribbean, they charge extra for bags. And so this can be really a difficult thing for mission teams, because a lot of times you're taking a suitcase full of tools or supplies that you want to leave and that kind of a thing. It can be almost cheaper to buy it there in a lot of cases, just simply because of the cost of the baggage. There are some airlines that do include the bags, like Southwest, for example. They still give you 2 bags at no charge. So whenever we have a group that's traveling in their market, we try to use them. We also have like JetBlue, for example. If you book an individual ticket, it's kind of interesting. With JetBlue, if you book an individual ticket, you get a free carry-on, but you have to pay extra for bags. But if you book a group, you're not allowed to take a carry-on, but you get 2 free checked bags. Yeah. So it's interesting, but it's very helpful for a mission team, right? So you can bring your extra stuff in. So that's really, really helpful. There's some of the airlines that have actually gotten very tricky with the way they handle the extras. So for example, Qatar Airways is one that they allow different things based upon the fare that you purchase. And so if you buy a ticket and you pay at a certain fare level, they do not include a bag, do not include a seat assignment. But then if you buy up to a higher fare level, those things are included. And so knowing those kind of things can make the difference of showing up at the airport, expecting you have a seat or expecting you're not paying for a bag, and then getting surprised. They've playing around with all kinds of things, just trying to figure out ways to make money with the existing inventory is the bottom line of what they're doing. Several years ago, they unbundled everything. Everybody probably remembers this. And so the things that used to all be included now are not included anymore. And so in what they actually did, they created what was called basic economy fares or light fares. And instead of offering a cheaper fare without any extras, the price you were paying already is what you're paying now for the basic economy fare. And if you want to get the extras that you once got before, you have to pay extra for them, right? So that's how they did that. And so they had things like with the American Airlines, with the basic economy fares, they would not allow you at first, they are now, but they would not allow you to bring a carry-on. So if you didn't know this and you showed up with a checked bag and a carry-on, they're going to make you check your bag and pay for it. And so because of these kind of things, we recognize right away these basic economy fares in the European market, they call it light fares. They don't meet the needs of our clientels. And because of that, we actually pay extra for a software that blocks these fares from us even seeing it, because we don't want our employees to accidentally book one of those fares and then have someone show up at the airport and just have an uncomfortable experience. So in those types of fares, a lot of times people are concerned when we're booking a group of 10 or more. They'll say, what kind of fare is this? Is this a basic fare? Those do not apply to groups of 10 or more, so you don't have to worry about that.
Okay. I know a lot of groups, a lot of churches, ministries. I have family members that have done this. They make their own arrangements, or in the past they did. So they would get online, they'd call or send emails or try to get different prices for things. Getting down to the brass tacks here, why use EO? Are we just going to give them, pass along the same fare they're going to see online or get from some phone person, wherever that phone person is? Are we going to be able to save them money? Are there any other benefits to using what you and your team provide?
There's a lot of different ways I could answer that question. And yes, we do. And when we first started the missions department, so the number one thing that we saw is that obviously with missions, it is very price-driven market. And so our desire was to try to get the pricing as low as possible so that people could either put more money into the mission project, or when you have a low price, the airfare is usually one of the largest components of the pricing. And so we wanted to try to get the price as low as possible so that more people would be able to go to the mission field. So that was kind of the motivation. But as time moved on, we started the missions department. It was kind of interesting, the timing that it all happened, and the Lord's hand was in it completely, because we started in the missions department in the summer of 2001, probably around June or July. That's just a couple of months before 9/11 happened, right? And it was also probably about 10 months, less than a year after the Intifada in Israel. So our Holy Land business dropped. Just a couple months after we started the missions department, all of a sudden 9/11 happens and planes are grounded everywhere, right? And so but our mission teams were going. They were still booking. So our first year, full year was 2002. We had 1,700 people that traveled in missions our very first year. So very, very good. And the main thing we focused on in the initial stages was saving money on mission teams. And I remember negotiating prices as low as 60% off the fare with some of the carriers. Like, we were getting some really good airfares. As time went on and as things developed, a lot of changes took place in the travel industry. We can't get 60% off fares anymore, but we can get low prices because we have group rates, we have connections and relationships with airlines, and we have knowledge and experience as well. If someone says, I need to get to Mwanza, Tanzania, I can tell you exactly right now how to get there, because I've booked it many times, and you cannot just book American Airlines straight into Mwanza, Tanzania. So it's that knowledge and expertise that's helped people a lot. And it's just the service. The service is, we're getting more and more to where people can do things online and they can self-serve in so many ways in so many industries. And that's a wonderful thing. It's really changed our world completely. But there's still a need for the travel professional that can help in emergencies, that can pick the best schedule, help you get the best pricing, help you when there's a problem, when someone shows up at the airport with their old passport instead of the current one, and they can't go with the group that same day. When things like that start happening, you want someone that you can call that's going to be able to help you. So can we save money? Yes, absolutely we can. But I'm leaning more and more the last maybe decade that the service is the greatest benefit that we offer.
So how does the pricing work? I know in a I'll say normal year, because we haven't had a normal year since COVID. In past years, so 2018, 2019, we were, as a company, buying tens of thousands of airline tickets. So do we still have access to pricing that is better than what the layman would find by going online? And
Yes.
by calling a group travel department, if that still exists.
Exactly. Yes, we do have a group travel department and that we work with. And when you get groups of 10 or more, not only do you get better pricing, and I mean that I have to nuance that a little bit, because if you have a group of, the typical missions group is 12 to 15 people, probably a large group would be 20. If you have a group of 40, you're not going to get as good of a price because they have limited number of seats. They're not going to give it kind of goes against conventional wisdom, right? You think, oh, the more people, they're going to give me the better pricing. It actually works against you. So if you have a really large group that you're taking, the pricing's not going to be necessarily as good. If you hit in the 12, 15 to 20 range, which is where most mission teams are, yes, we do have a group desk that we can work with, and we get really good pricing for people. But then there's also a lot of flexibility. And so if you're booking tickets online, you have to pay for them immediately. You have to have everybody's full name, all that information. If you're booking a group reservation, you can pay a deposit. You know, I mentioned the booking fee earlier. Not all airlines have a booking fee. They all do require a deposit, and that can range anywhere from $50 to $100 per seat. But if the deposit is paid, in most cases, there are exceptions to everything because they all have different policies that they work off of. But if you're the typical carrier, about 3 months prior to departure, that is when the penalties kick in. So if we book something, and you can book as early as 11 months prior to your return date, and we recommend booking as early as possible. That's going to help you get the best pricing. And so if you book a group 10 months in advance, and then you start off with 20 seats and you find out you're only going to have 15, well, you have an opportunity all the way up to 3 months prior to departure to reduce your seats without losing any of your deposit. And then what they'll say is something like, from that point forward, 3 months before, you have to use 90% of the seats you're holding. So even after that, if like one person drops out or something like that, you can do that without losing any of your deposit. And if you do, you're maybe losing the deposit for 1 or 2 seats, something like that. So there's flexibility. So you can hold the seats, which gives you a confirmed schedule, a confirmed price. A lot of times people will make the mistake of waiting until they get their mission team together, they've promoted the trip, and then they want to come out and they book the trip. Well, it's too late by that point. And this past year, we had, in 24, we had several groups that had to change their dates because there was nothing available in the dates they wanted. If you book early, you've got your schedule, you've got your pricing, and you've got something to work with already in place as you're building your team. And you know you've got till that 3 month prior mark, because we'll give you that date, to reduce your seats without any penalty. And so it gives a lot of flexibility to the mission leader when they're preparing to take a group.
Some of that goes back to the inventory issue, is there just aren't as many flights still as there was in 2018, 2019.
Yeah.
So back then there were a lot more seats on a lot more planes.
Right.
And actually in 2020, the airlines were going to add even more,
Mm-hmm.
and then all that got canceled.
Yep. And they were going to bigger aircraft. They were going to try to make bigger. And actually the opposite thing has happened. They've actually, what I'm seeing in a lot of markets where there used to be, domestically in particular, where there used to be larger aircraft, I'm seeing smaller planes now. And they also changed their rules where they would at one point allow 60% of the aircraft to go to groups. They lowered it to 50%. Which doesn't seem like a lot, but on a small plane, that is a lot.
Oh, yeah.
And so now the available seats for a group, so a lot of times they'll have seats available, but not available for groups. And so if they're full for groups, then we have to find another option.
So Donald, I think you had a couple questions you wanted to talk to Gordon.
Right, yeah, thanks, Mark and Gordon. I've had good experience with the missions department at EO. Some of that good experience is you are able to watch the airlines and watch the industry in ways that no one can, not even staff members of churches and schools and organizations. They don't have the software and the experience and the contacts, relationships. Some of the important stuff for me is that if a group uses EO, there are others as well, other groups, but if they use EO, what's the advantage of that? I already know the advantage. What I'm pausing here because I'm overthinking this. I'm thinking about too many things. Gordon, if I were a staff member or a volunteer at a church, what are some of the mistakes I could make that you would rather prevent me from making? That is, should I go online and try to get all the pricing I possibly can, or is that going to work against us? What about if we're in the States or overseas and we need bands or we need some accommodations? How much of that can you provide? And so that the missions team can actually concentrate on preparing for the mission rather than doing all the logistics.
Mm-hmm. So a couple of things. Conventional wisdom tells us if you shop around, you're going to get the best price, right? And pretty much if you're buying something, that makes logical sense. But what people sometimes miss is that if you send the same request to 5 different tour operators, they're all going to go after the same seats. And so what ends up happening is the very first one that gets the seats. So the way the airline pricing works is they'll offer so many seats at one price, and then it goes up to the next price. And then when those are gone, it goes up to the next price. And so as seats are pulled out of inventory, the pricing starts to go up. And so if 3 agencies all manage to get 15 seats for you, the 4th one's they're progressively getting higher. And here's the difference though. The company that gets the best price isn't guaranteed to give the best price to you because you don't know what they're charging. You don't know what they're paying the airline. So if it all comes down to the mindset of the organization. So a typical travel organization, here's what their goal is: maximize profits, right? And so they're going to charge as much as they can get away with. So if they book some seats, they get a $300 price, and they see that the prices in the market are around $500. Well, maybe they're going to charge you $400, because they're going to feel like you're still getting a good price. They're making good money. But we have a different mindset. We operate with more of a ministry mindset. Our goal is to send as many people to the mission field as we possibly can. And any profit we make in the mission department is solely off volume, because we have a very small service fee that covers our expenses that we include, and then we pass the rest of the savings on to the group. And so that's the mentality that we operate off of. There's been a lot of times where we have, from a business standpoint, you would think we were crazy because we gave hundreds of dollars to the group in savings and we made our still same small service fee. But from a ministry mindset, it makes perfect sense, right? Because that's what we're here to do, is to support the churches and the missions organizations and build the kingdom of God, right? That's what we're all about. And so that's what we're doing. And as far as contacting multiple agencies, so you may actually shoot yourself in the foot, even though you're trying to be a good steward and get the best pricing. And so what we tell people is if you want to check around, we get it, but check with us first, because we're going to get the best price. We're going to pass the savings on to you. The other thing that I would say, and this really goes back to service. Why do you need someone like us? And a couple of scenarios, I could tell you story after story, but a couple of scenarios come to mind. And one was, I think 2 years ago in Haiti. Haiti is always a hotbed, right? A lot of things happen. We had a group that bravely went, even though things were kind of, not too good during that time. And while they were there, the group leader reached out to me and he says, "Get us out of here." And so I was communicating with him, and they were just outside of Port-au-Prince, and I said, "Can you get to the airport safely?" And he said, "Yes, if we leave real early in the morning, we think we can." So we arranged everything, rebooked his tickets, and had them on flights for the next day. They got on the plane and they got home. He was glad he had us to call, right? Because if he booked it himself, guess who has to fix that problem? He has to figure it out. When your flight suddenly gets canceled, or a major schedule change happens, or you experience a travel delay, it's up to you to fix it if you book the flights. And so would you rather have to somehow figure out how to do this with Orbitz or Priceline or something like that? Or would you rather call someone like me and say, get me out of here? So that's where I say the service is one of the major benefits, is that you have that support all the way through. We offer a travel emergency service, even on weekends. And so we help people when they're trying to travel. I had a situation too that I want to share. This was from just this past July. And we had a group, they were traveling on Lufthansa and they were in Kenya. And we noticed that the flight from, one of their flights got canceled on the way back. I believe there was like a strike happening around that time. And so their flight, they were booked Nairobi to Frankfurt, Frankfurt back to Dallas. Well, the Frankfurt to Dallas flight was canceled. And they were aware of it. So we worked and we got them on flights the very next day to get home. So everything was taken care of. I thought they were fine. Come in the next day and I find out that there was a problem in Frankfurt now, and they weren't going the next day either. And so we began immediately working on alternate arrangements for them the following day. And I reached out to the mission leader, and she said, it's okay. We called Lufthansa last night and we talked to a guy for 4 hours, and he rebooked us all on Delta Airlines, and took 4 hours. And she said, we paid $23,000. Yeah. And I said, $23,000? I said, they canceled the flight. You shouldn't have paid anything. It puzzled me too, because just 24 hours before we moved their flight for free. I don't know why they paid. So here's what ended up happening. They Googled and they saw Lufthansa, and so they clicked on it and they called the number. It wasn't Lufthansa, and it was some agency, which I actually tracked down and found out they did have an office here in the States, and the person they talked to completely scammed them. And what he did is he went on delta.com and he bought brand new tickets for them, and then he charged them, wait for this, $4,000 as a service fee to book those tickets for them. He booked one-way tickets, charged them $4,000. So I told the pastor who was on the trip, I said, send me everything that you have. I just want to look through it and see if there's anything we can do. And he did, and I had all their confirmation numbers and everything. So I pulled up the reservation, and because it had just been booked within a few hours, I could see this nice little red button that said cancel and refund. So I canceled all the tickets for them, and it went back to the card. And I told him, I said, listen, there's nothing I can do about the service fee. He manually charged that. I have no recourse. But I said, here's the phone number, and I would recommend you call their corporate office and say, your guy scammed me, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to do the right thing before we charge it back with the credit card company and report you. So that's where we left it. I don't know, but out of the $23,000, we got back all but $4,000 immediately for them, and hopefully the rest worked out. So these are intelligent people, right? They're not foolish people. But when you're in the middle of a situation like that, you're in a foreign country, are you always thinking rationally? And something happens immediately. And so they Googled and they just went with it, even though probably what they were hearing didn't sound right. They went with it anyway. And so it's if they would have come to me, we never would have even gotten there, you know. And so that's why it's good to have the service. You've got somebody that knows the industry, knows what is and is not supposed to happen, and will take care of you all the way through. So savings is good. It's very important. That's why we started a missions department. But if you save all this money and you get to the airport and they don't have a reservation for you, but you have a ticket, now what? You know what I'm saying? And so there's some airlines we just choose not to use because we've had issues with them in the past. That's where knowledge and experience comes in. And so, yes, you'll get savings, but you're also going to get the benefit of our knowledge and expertise as well. So that's why we recommend. That's why we're here, and we help so many people, and we feel like we're a part of their mission, and so that's why it's a blessing for us. And a lot of times they'll come back, they'll send us pictures, they'll tell us that they accomplished on their trip, and it's always wonderful to hear that. So we're glad to be a part of it. Now, to your other question, Donald, about the other travel arrangements, yes, we actually have. We can help. Airfare is mostly what people need in missions, because in most of the time they're contacting a missionary, or they're working through a missions organization who's handling the lodging and the meals and the ministry. And so they're coming, they don't need our help with the other area. So that's probably 90% of what we do. But we do have some groups that look to us to help them with those arrangements. And wherever we have, because we have this tour side of our business, we've been in business, like Mark said earlier, over 50 years now. We've got contacts all over the world. And so because of that, we are able to help with arrangements in other countries. And so right now, this year, we've got 2 groups in Italy where we did the land part for them. One in Iona, it's a little island off the coast of Scotland. We've sent people to Africa. We actually had a group, it was last year, that it was one church, but they flew to 4 countries in Africa. And so we arranged some of the land arrangements for them, the airfare from country to country for them. We offer travel insurance, that can help. And so a lot of different things that we offer, but we can arrange the transportation. What they do during the day is up to them, but they can have the bus available to them. We'll do the hotel for them. And if they want to do, they're in Africa and you want a 1-day safari, we can do that for you. Or we've booked a Galapagos cruise for some people who went on an Ecuador mission trip and then wanted to stay over and do a Galapagos cruise. And so we've arranged that. So we've arranged, and of course in Israel, we have lots of contacts. We've had people actually take mission trips to Israel. And so as they do, and of course, they're going to want to do some sightseeing while they're there. And so while they're there, maybe 2 weeks, we'll do 3 or 4 days of sightseeing for them while they do their mission work as well. So the nice thing about having that other side supporting is that we have the capability. We actually have a group going to Mexico this year, which asked us as well to arrange all the travel for them. So lots of different countries, and we do help, and it takes a lot of the pressure off of the mission leader, because we do want focus on building your team and getting them ready for whatever you're going to do when you're there, because missions looks very different, right? There's a lot of different things that you can do. Build your team up and get them ready to go. Let us take care of all the headaches and all the logistics that get it. And I could tell you, when we book the land arrangements, there's a lot of details involved. Oh my goodness, a lot of details involved. And so we're the ones doing all that and making sure every I is dotted, every T is crossed, everything is in place so that they don't have to worry about it. So that's part of the service that we provide.
So you mentioned this earlier, so you can correct me. So a good group size, or a good group number where we can start to really see savings would be 10 and up.
Yes.
And then below 10, we can help you, but the prices may not be as competitive or as different.
Exactly. And it works a little differently. If you have 9 or less, it's an instant purchase type thing. So we'll give you a quote, but we'd have to have the full names, and full payment is due right after confirmation with those kinds of groups. But I will say we have had situations where we've got some people that book with us that, even though maybe they only take 2 to 3 people with them, but they ran into a situation to where they booked, like we had one lady, she booked, she was going to Africa and booked, she had 3 people traveling with her. 2 were going to round trip together, and the other person was going over with them but coming back a different day. She booked the first 2, and then she went online to book the 3rd person. Guess what? She couldn't find the same outbound flight. And so we ended up being able, she called me in a panic, And she said, I was just going to do it online because it was only 3. And so I was able to find the exact same flight for her outbound, booked the return, and she said, that's actually cheaper than what I found online. And so she goes, from now on, I'm booking everything through you. So even if, again, the service is there, even if the savings is not, you still benefit from the service, and having that support while you're booking, while you're traveling, all the way through, it's worth it.
So for the groups, when do they need to make payments? Payment?
It's usually 2 payments. So usually it'll be a deposit, more or less it's going to be, and if they have a booking fee, we'll charge the booking fee and deposit together, just simplifies things. So within a week, usually about a week after confirmation. And then the final payment it varies from carrier to carrier, but more or less about 5 to 6 weeks before departure. And so, we give a group agreement to them that has all the due dates so they know when everything's coming. And just ahead of those due dates, we'll send reminders out so they know they're coming. And then once we get their final names, we send a final invoice, usually about 2 weeks before it's due, to give them time to get payment to us.
So do we have to get passport information or pictures of passports or anything like that?
There's a couple of airlines that require it, but very few, very few. So whenever it's required, we get the information. But apart from that, all we need is the name, date of birth, and sex as it appears on the passport.
Okay. And what about visas? Does your team get involved in that at all, or?
When we first started the missions department, we did. But then I was like, we're doing all this work. They're sending it. I have to charge them extra to send me the passport. I got to send it off. Then I have to send it back. Am I really helping them? So I stopped doing it. But I have 5 reputable visa services that I refer people to whenever they need visas. So we do it that way.
Okay. And then other travel requirements, is that something that your team knows about as far as maybe vaccinations or things you can or can't bring into the country?
Yeah, we look at for everything that we send out, there's a link to the State Department's website where they can go right to the country information and get all the details of that. And so we do provide that information. If they ask us a specific question, we will look it up for them, but it is made available to them. During COVID, we were on top of all the requirements everywhere everyone went. So we sent links, and that was interesting times. But
we don't need that again.
No, we do not. But we got a lot of questions, and it was hard to find answers, but we finally found good resources that we could get information. So people came to us, and we would share that information with them. So and when things would change, we would let them know about it. So we stay up on that kind of stuff.
Okay. Donald, what have you heard from some of the churches you have referred, churches and ministries, referred to Gordon for the service?
To that point specifically, it really warms my heart as clergy when clergy, lay people, adults, sometimes with youth, very often with youth. It warms my heart that EO Missions Department can save money, and sometimes that's a genuine surprise to the folks planning the mission. And so it means one of 2 things usually. Either the youth have to raise fewer dollars to be able to go on the trip, or the fundraiser events can put more of the money that they raise on the fundraiser into the mission and take things with them that are needed where they're going. They can give a gift or more than one gift to the organizations to which they're going. So all of that is very heartening to me. And that happened in my ministry almost 10 years ago. And that really has stayed with me, and I see it happen over and over again. It's really great to see that people are not being taken advantage of. And indeed, it's great that a Christian business, a Christian organization has pilgrimage and mission in mind. And if we've got just a minute, I'd like to say it's wonderful that my wife and I have traveled on tours, but more especially pilgrimages. And we've traveled with groups of 10, 16, 24, 36. Beyond that, we've traveled with EO on a cruise with mission components, and that cruise had hundreds of people on it. One pilgrimage we took, we had actually 3 different church groups together by design. And we all were together in the Holy Land. And then some of us from each of those groups chose to plan ahead and go to Egypt, which was also a surprisingly mind-opening and faith-changing experience for me and for others. I'm really glad, though, to see especially mission groups who are running on a tight budget, and they want to be as effective and faithful as they can be and be meaningful to the people to whom they're going, and building relationships and making disciples and making friends. They want to do as much as they can without waste or trouble or worry. And that's why I'm with you today, because I see what a difference that makes, and I'm very grateful. My prayer life always begins every morning. Every prayer experience begins with gratitude and thanksgiving, and then for intercession and prayer for others. So thank you. This is at the end of our time together, but I give thanks for you every day, and I really appreciate it. Thank you, Gordon, and thanks, Mark.
Thank you.
So Gordon, coming to the end of our time.
Yeah.
How do they get a hold of you? What resources do you have online that they might be able to use? What's the best way to let you help them?
Okay. If they'd like to request a group, they could just send an email to missions@travelwithus.com. So missions@travelwithus.com. You can also call us 800-235-8795. So that's 800-235-8795, and you can reach Jenny or I, and we will be happy to help you. If you'd like more information, you can go to our website. If you go to the eo.travel website and just look for the missions page, you'll be able to find us there, and it has some information about what we are all about. And also there's a request a quote button there that you can click on, and that will send the details of your trip to us, and we can start working on it for you.
The website is eo.travel/missions. So that's the fastest way, eo.travel/missions. And there's some printed resources or digital resources you can print off or read there that would help you with your planning and really cover some of the points that Gordon talked about today. Well, thank you very much for hosting us. And I will be at the Episcopal Parish Network. I always have to remember the new name. The conference coming up later on this month or in February. So you can also see me there, send your representatives, and we can talk with you. Thank you again, and we look forward to serving you in ministry.